And as 2022 winds down, let's take a look at keywords as buzzwords that resonated with the Nigerian economy in 2022. And to help us unpack these words, we have Mr. Sam Chidoka, MD, Kairos Capital, join us in the studio. It's great to have you, and we made it. We're almost there.
Almost there.
But
almost there.
We made it this far.
A few hours to go.
Yes, and it's great that we do have a lot to be thankful for.
Sure.
Even though it's been a challenging year, thank God we have life.
More than anything else.
All right, so let's drill down on the words now. The first one, geopolitics. Yeah. Russia, Ukraine.
So, I mean, we started the year with people anticipating there will be another variant of COVID.
Right.
And whilst that was going on, Russia invaded Ukraine. And so COVID became secondary. And that became the major issue that affected commodities pricing, affected in fact, the deceleration we've seen in international economies is because of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. So whilst it happened thousands of miles away, it's affected almost every part of the country because of price of commodities. Some countries hit worse than others. Ghana hit worse than Nigeria, but we're feeling the pinch as well.
And obviously, with geopolitics, that wasn't really expected. When we were forecasting from 2021, that came about and also did a wonder, for most economies. And we saw currencies also suffer,
yes,
because of this. But the next buzzword now, the dreaded I word that has been with us, first of all, it started by being transitory. That word was going around. That was 2021. Then it became embedded,
yes,
in 2022, talking about inflation. Yeah. And
yes,
we started at 15.6%,
yep,
in Nigeria in January, and now we're at 21.47%.
And so the thing about inflation is that, again, the inflation we have in Nigeria is not demand-side inflation, but supply-side inflation, right? There are different types of inflation. What we have is mainly imported inflation. So again, you go back to geopolitics. Once the war in Ukraine and Russia started, prices of commodities went up. We're import dependent, and so we imported that inflation. Now, add that to the fact that we also had other causative issues happening in Nigeria. So header farmers issues happening, insecurity issues around the food basket, affected issues around the kind of harvest we had, and so price of food items went up. Then we had flooding in that same food bank area, and that affected harvest as well. Then general insecurity that slowed down business in the southeast, in the northeast, and kidnapping on the rise. People can no longer go to the farms. So when you sum all of this, Russia, Ukraine, internal problems, you can see why we are at 21.47% inflation. However, the reason we are 21.47 is because we still have fuel subsidy. Take away fuel subsidy, you probably have 300 to 400 basis points more inflation in Nigeria.
And looking at, still talking about geopolitics, now, is there a way we would have set up, the economy? Are there things we would have done that would have been some kind of buffer to what, happened globally?
Oh, yeah, sure. Surely we've been, in 2008, there was the global economic crisis. Well, we had a buffer. We had reserves that could cater for it. And we're able to ride that wind. While many countries went into recession, Nigeria didn't. But today we don't. So if you think about it, our foreign reserves has actually tanked. It's gone south. So I think we started somewhere around $40 billion at the beginning of the year. We're somewhere around $36 billion right now. So we just don't have the buffer. What we could have done right was to have had savings for the rainy day. But remember that we've been borrowing, borrowing was going out of business. And so our debt service ratios were going up. Debt to revenue in 2021 touched 96%. So that means that for every dollar we made, we spent 96 cents paying debt. So we now didn't have room to wriggle. So once geopolitics hit us, we're in a fix.
Quite a fix. And also related to inflation, another buzzword, hikes, and more towards interest rate hikes. And obviously, we saw the Fed, leading the pack with, the rate hikes.
So what happened was that the Fed, of course, they had no option but to do those rate hikes. And then, of course, capital flight happened. Once the Fed began to raise rates, hedge funds and asset managers who were investing in countries like Nigeria or emerging markets where they were getting decent returns, they started flight to safety. They started going back home with their funds, right? And then internally as well, we started responding. NPR started going up. Consecutively, we've increased NPR at almost every MPC meeting that has held in recent time. And so you expected that hike to happen. Why were we increasing NPR? To tame inflation? Because all of these are interconnected and related. However, it hasn't worked. We've had 10 consecutive months of increase in inflation. And the simple reason is, whilst we are hiking NPR, the same central bank is funding the federal government through ways and means with over 20 trillion naira. With 20 trillion naira released into the economy, and you're still trying to reduce money in circulation, it's like opening the tap in one place and locking it in another place. It just doesn't work. So are we still going to see hikes? As long as inflation continues to go up, you expect that rate hikes will happen.
And taking you back, to the Fed. Now, we did see the U.S. dollar rally, this year, due to the Fed, getting really tight,
yes,
with the economy. But there is this talk about the dollar actually peaking. Do you think the dollar has peaked?
It depends on which currency you compare it to the naira. It hasn't peaked, right? I do not think the dollar has peaked. If you study the history of how the dollar has always performed, there's always that story about the dollar peaking, the story about moving away from the dollar. But the U.S. has just found a way to become the economic, policeman of the world, and making sure, like the Bretton Woods institution started, that the dollar is the rallying currency from which every other currency derives value, right? I do not think so. I think that the dollar, the U.S. Fed will continue to do everything to strengthen the dollar.
And we'll still see, obviously, the next word, devaluation. That was another buzzword right here in Nigeria. We've seen the naira in the parallel market, hit incredible highs, and there was speculation, about 1,000 naira to the dollar at some point. How you seen?
Well, so they are related. They're twins: devaluation and depreciation. Because what we've seen more is more of depreciation of the currency than the devaluation. The devaluation is the official, reduction in the value of the currency, but depreciation is market-driven. So what we've seen more is actually the depreciation of the currency. In 2022, the naira has lost circa 18%. Between 2015 and 2022, the naira has lost over 50% in value, especially the parallel market, right? So we've seen that depreciation simply because it's related to revenue. In 2022, the government projected that revenue was going to be 10 trillion naira in the budget. As at August, we had done just below 4 trillion naira. If you prorate it, we're supposed to be doing somewhere around 6.6 trillion naira, but we had done less than 4 trillion naira as at August in revenue, meaning that the central bank just doesn't have the dollar, right, to support the currency. Because all that's happening to the currency is the demand for the dollar. And once the central bank doesn't have the dollar to support the currency, you're going to see depreciation, and at some point, you're going to see devaluation. So that's the word that has come, and until our revenue sources, especially FX revenue sources, which is mainly oil and gas, until it receives some curative or some cure, as the case may be, I do not see us walking away from further depreciation. But thank God we didn't get to $1,000.
Right.
1,000 naira
thank
to the
God
dollar.
we didn't get to 1,000 naira. And
Yeah.
still, related to the central bank, we did have that issue about the DSS trying to, arrest the CBN governor, and obviously that was quite incredible. And I'm wondering how investors, international investors, actually see that kind of news.
So that's not good news for Nigeria at all, in any form, shape, or guise. It's not good news. When we do things like this, it's like tantamount to shooting ourselves in the foot. Especially with the fact that we've allowed it to linger as a rumor. He's not been arrested. He's not even in the country. Some say he cannot come back. Now, I read yesterday there's a court injunction restraining them from arresting him. Just imagine yourself being a non-Nigerian and having $1 million that you were thinking of investing in Nigeria. The first thing you do is, let me wait until they sort out themselves. Because, I mean, when the central bank governors of many countries cough, the market reacts. Now, our central bank governor is not even in Nigeria. So, without joining issues with what seems like a lot of politics and a lot of rumors and here and there, it's not good for the country.
Definitely not good. And obviously, we'll see that impact in the bonds, in our bonds markets. Let's talk about another one now. This is even still big right now. Redesign. The Naira redesign, the great redesign.
Well, so with the redesign, I think, so again, what the central bank is trying to do, from my read, is again to control currency in circulation. When you redesign the currency, you pull back the old currency. So what happens is that all the currency outside the banking system comes back into the banking system. Then the central bank has control of currency in circulation. You can actually tell this is the currency in circulation, this is where it is, and all of that. And then you can manage inflation, right? So there's been so many issues, especially the politics of it and all of that. And again, I'm not a politician. I don't want to go into the politics. But on the finance part of it, is a good move. Some people have criticized it in terms of cost. I do not think it's about cost. You need to know the currency in circulation. As the central bank, you need to control your currency, right? And if the central bank says over time, we now no longer have control over currency in circulation, and there is so much happening outside the banking sector, the redesign is the right way to go, is the right thing to do, right way to go to control the currency question and currency in circulation.
How are you seeing adoption going forward for the new Naira?
So that's going to be tricky. When you deal with a nation that has so many people who are not knowledgeable enough, when you have high illiteracy levels, when you have so many in the informal sector and the villages and all of that, it's going to be tough. It's going to take some time, but adoption would happen. At the outset, in the rural areas, you're not going to have so much of adoption. But in the urban areas, adoption will be quicker. The central bank governor had said the banks will start loading their ATMs with the new currency. I've used the ATM in recent time. I haven't seen the new currency yet.
I actually used the ATM this morning. I pulled out, a couple of Naira, and the old notes came out.
Yes.
But I got one new note.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Just one. Yeah. It was quite incredible. I felt so lucky.
I haven't seen it yet. I haven't felt it yet. I haven't physically touched the new currency. And I think I've used the ATM in a couple of days ago, right? So it's going to take some time for adoption to happen. And there needs to be...
But is it so wrong to let both currencies, run through, for a while before the old notes are actually pulled out?
Yeah, I think that's what they're doing already. It's going to be in circulation until the old notes...
With no limit, because if you see the way the UK is doing it,
yes.
There's no time limit for both currencies running.
So with the UK, our reason is different. We're doing this to know the currency in circulation, to have control over inflation, help in somewhat to fight corruption, right?
So it's not just about
It's not just about
vote buying.
Well, that's another elephant in the room, vote buying and the elections. So if you put all the things, if you sum it all together, it's not a bad thing to do. And I do not think that what the CBN is doing is wrong. I'm not one of those who will criticize them for doing it. All I'm saying is make the new notes available and do a lot of enlightenment, especially in the rural areas, so that adoption is easy.
All right, another buzzword is obviously queues. But now I want you to, look back and tell me the wins for the Nigerian economy in 2022.
So tailwinds, we've spoken about most of them. Inflation. We've seen our GDP not grow at the rate at which we expect. Good part is that we haven't entered another recession. In Q1, I think our GDP was about 3.1% growth. In Q2, it was 3.5%. In Q3, it came down to 2.5%. The World Bank had projected that we'll do about 3%, 3.2% year end. It doesn't seem like if Q4 is anything like Q3, it doesn't seem like it will be. So we've had growth issues, we've had inflation issues, we've had insecurity issues, we've had depreciation, devaluation of the currency, we've had growth in unemployment. The reports that came out about unemployed people in the economy, especially youth unemployment, is quite alarming. We've had growth in poverty. The report also on poverty by MBS was also alarming. And so we've had, the tailwinds haven't been good. We're hopeful that entering 2023, we'll start to do some things right. But
so the economy didn't have any wins?
Wins. So the stock market was a win.
Okay.
The stock market.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in terms of wins, the stock market, we started the year at 22 trillion naira market cap. We're ending the year at 26 trillion naira. That's a gain of 4 trillion naira in the capital market. All share index was 42,000 basis points. Is now 49,000 basis points.
I think we thought 50 yesterday.
Yeah,
50,000. Yeah.
Somewhere around 49,000 right now. If you check that, this is around 15% growth.
Right.
So if your portfolio returned 15%, that's decent.
Even though it didn't beat inflation.
It didn't beat inflation.
Right.
But at least you're doing better than what we did in previous years. Exactly. And as a matter of fact, we are one of the best performing stock markets in the world.
Right. Yeah.
So that's a win.
That's a win. Quite a big win.
I honestly can't think of any other win.
All right. Well, we look forward to 2023, and obviously to be fun, reporting the uncertainties coming up in 2020. But we do hope for the best. We do hope for more profit going forward. Thank you so much, Mr. Sam Chidoka, MD, Kairos Capital. It was great having this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.